All right. We're going to go ahead and get started, friends. Um, I am so delighted. Whoops, let me do a little swap there. So delighted to spend my time with you guys. I hope that you've had a really good morning. I'm excited to spend the end of your day and have some discussion on leadership and aligning your beliefs so that you can have bold action and become incredible leaders. So, a little bit about me. I want to introduce myself. So I'm a mom. I have three kids. Two of my kids go to college. One, my daughter's getting ready to graduate from Ball State with a theater directing degree. My older son, Joe, is a student at Anderson University. He's studying marketing and he plays for the football team there. And my youngest son, Sam, he actually is a sophomore at Fishers High School. In addition to being a mom and a wife to my husband, Phil, for over 25 years, I own my own company called Leading Well, where I do keynotes, executive coaching, and workshops. I'm also the chief learning officer for a private equity firm called Threefold, where my role is to ready leaders for growth and develop a leadership pipeline so that all of our leaders across all the companies in our portfolio are becoming their best self and thriving in our businesses. And the last thing is I'm a podcast host. So I have a podcast called Made for Impact. If you're interested in learning more about leadership, you can check that out. But to get us started, I want to know a little bit about you guys. So I'm curious, in the Q&A, write a statement as to what brought you to this session today. Because I know you've been talking about a lot of different things, but I'm curious as to why you want to be in this session around aligning your beliefs with bold action. So I'm going to give you a moment and I'll ask Sarah to unmute and kind of share some of your responses. So what brought you today? What are you hoping to get out of our session? I'll take just a couple minutes for that. And Sarah, when you see some responses, if you would go ahead and share those with me, that would be fantastic.
All right,
Any
Gretchen, here they're starting to come in.
awesome.
How to be a better person.
Awesome.
Um, what brought me here, Adrian said, I thought about other people in Christianity along with my own beliefs I'm struggling in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I want to make my beliefs matter as actual effects that aid others, not just statements.
I love that.
I wanted to see a different view on beliefs and the importance.
Wonderful. Those are all great. Keep those coming in. I'm going to keep rolling because I only get a short amount of time with you. But friends, those of you who have shared, you are in the right place. I am so excited to dive into this content with you. And my hope is that you think about the information that I'm going to share with you today beyond today. There's going to be some things that I share with you that might be relevant and like small actions you can take now. But I want you to be thinking about yourself as a leader because I have a personal belief that everyone is a leader. And leadership does not always mean management. You can be a leader in your home, you can be a leader in your community, you can be a leader in your school. So I want you to think about yourself as a leader and what would be an intention that you have around that. So our focus today is going to be spent in three areas. The first one is understanding the value circle. So I have an exercise here I'm going to show you in a moment and really get you kind of grounded in a perspective of what's really driving your life. Okay. The second thing we're going to do is I'm going to talk about understanding your values and really how your values actually guide your leadership. And then the last part I'm going to spend time talking to you about is with regards to accountability, understanding it, and how our fears really get in the way of us holding ourselves accountable to being great leaders and what prevents you from being your best self. So that's how we're going to spend our time. Let's dive in. When we think about our life, we can really look at it with the perspective of there's like 6 dimensions of our life, right? So when we think about our life and how do I become the best version of myself? How can I be the best leader of myself? We think about it in these 6 ways. The first being mental. And we think about the mental part of our life. It's your ability to discern information, recognize your creativity and your knowledge and skills. So think about all the mental work that you do on developing new skills. A second dimension would be the physical part of our life, your ability to eat right, to exercise, and keeping up with your hygiene rituals, right? So how well are you at taking care of your physical self? A third dimension is the emotional piece. And so, emotional dimension of our life is your ability to integrate your feelings and acknowledge multiple emotions and be satisfied with the life that you lead. So it's a little bit different from mental because mental is about being able to recognize your creativity, whereas emotional is about getting in touch with those feelings and how that impacts your life. A fourth dimension is relational. And relational is really your ability to cultivate interactions with other people and have strong relationships in your life. So it might be your friends, it might be your family, it might be teachers, pastors, any types of relationships that you have in your life. The fifth dimension is spiritual, and that's your ability to identify purpose in your life. You don't have to be religious to have a spiritual wellness within yourself, but it's about being at peace with yourself and your surroundings. And then the last dimension is financial, and it's your ability to fully meet your current and financial obligations and how secure you are in making decisions that affect your life. Now, I recognize that some of you are not able to work. Maybe, if you're not 16, it's really hard to find a job and have any kind of control of your financial situation. But being aware of the fact that that's a dimension of your life. And as you think about your leadership, that's something that can actually impact it. So from these 6 dimensions, I like us to think about a value circle. So when I'm working with leaders, because I'm an executive coach and I develop lots and lots of leadership programs, I've had the pleasure of working with thousands of leaders and helping them, number one, become their best self, but also help their businesses grow. I often ask them this question, and that is, what's at the center of your life? Because whatever is at the center of your life determines the values and beliefs that you have. The values and beliefs that you have determine the actions and decisions that you make. And the actions and decisions that you make impact the influence and the impact that you have on the world. So let me give you an example. If I said, what's at the center of your life? And you said, being an athlete, being physically strong, being an athlete and taking good care of myself. Okay. So your values and beliefs then would likely fall into how to exercise, how often you exercise, valuing nutrition, valuing the belief of having good habits, getting up on time, maybe even like making your bed, like having a value of physicality and stretching yourself in that way. And so your actions and your decisions related to that might be, instead of staying up late and playing video games, you might be going to bed early, right? Or instead of going to a party, maybe you go to a workout and then you go to the party a little bit later, right? And then the influence and impact that you have on the world might be that you end up becoming an Olympian, right? And so then you get to influence and motivate people. So that's kind of like one example that might be applicable. So I want you right now, I want you to take a moment and I want you to think about, what would you say if you and I were having coffee and I said to you, what is the center of your life? And as you think about that, I want you to also process whatever you're saying is at the center of your life. How are your values and beliefs supporting that? Lots of times when we're feeling very frustrated, very stressed, very uncomfortable, it's because we're out of alignment with what we value and believe and how we're being asked to behave. And so as I'm telling you all this, you might be thinking, well, Gretchen, I'm not really sure like what my values are. That's okay. Sometimes we talk about values, it's hard to know what we mean. And so if you've got your phone, go ahead and scan this QR code. Brene Brown, maybe you've heard of her. She is an incredible author and speaker and a great researcher. Lots of people talk about her because she had an incredible TED Talk called something about vulnerability. And she created this very long and very helpful list of values that we may have. And if you're stuck trying to figure out, like, I'm not sure what my values are, I'd invite you to check out this list. And I find it helpful personally to really only focus in on maybe 3 to 5 values about my leadership. And I try to focus on specifically 3 that keep me on track and aligned with how I want people to experience my leadership. So for me, one of my core values is integrity and honesty. So those 2 things are extremely important to me. And when I show up and I am in relationship with someone, whether it be someone I'm coaching or if I'm leading a training class like this, it's very important to me that I am always perceived as demonstrating great integrity and being honest. And what I find is that it is such a core part of me that when I experience someone that is not honest, it immediately puts up a barrier for me. It immediately makes me feel a little uncomfortable. So I know that that's a core value for me. But I want you to think about, what are some core values for you? And as we think about aligning your beliefs and creating bold action, a practice that I have adopted for over 15 years is to identify one word to be my life theme for the year. One word that sometimes is one of those values, right? A word that I want to think about as how I can be my best self this year. It's a practice I have done year after year. Last year, my word was wisdom. So I wanted by the end of the year to feel like I had gained some wisdom, that I understood how one could acquire it. And through that practice, what I realized was I wasn't loving myself well, and I wasn't loving what I was doing. That was some wisdom that I gained. And so this year, my one word for 2025 is love. And I chose that word because I want to love myself well, and I want to love what I'm doing. And as a result of that, I want to love the people in my life better. And so having that one word in front of me as my life theme and thinking about how I interact with people, and if we go back to those 6 dimensions, that's what helps me stay on track, right? So physically, I want to love what I look like. I want to love myself. So that might mean I have to set some goals around taking good physical care of myself, good self-care. Mentally, I want to love myself. So I want to get rid of some of that negative self-talk where I think like I'm not good enough. Financially, I want to love what I'm doing, which might mean I need to save a little bit of money so that I can go on vacation. So I share all this with you so you can start thinking about maybe one word that can help drive your leadership intention for the year. And as we think about the type of leader that we want to be and how values impact that, I think it's helpful to think about, what does personal growth look like for you right now? Personal growth might be in one of those 6 areas. You can't possibly be working on all 6 areas at one time, but maybe personal growth for you is just about developing better relationships in your life. Maybe personal growth for you is about being more physically intentional about how you take care of your body. Maybe it's about being more mentally wise and studying more, whatever that might be. And with personal growth, we also need then to develop habits that help support that growth, right? So maybe I need to start doing things, or maybe I need to stop doing some things, right? Maybe I need to drink more water and drink less soda. Maybe I need to stop doom scrolling on social media for so many hours, whatever that might be. And I like to ask myself at the end of the year, what do I want to be able to say? What do I want to know about myself, that I know that I'm growing into the person that I want to be? So by the end of the year, what do I want to be able to say? So I shared with you, my word for the year is love. And by the end of the year, I want to be able to say that I love what I'm doing, I loved myself well, and I loved other people well. And so my challenge for you is, what does that look like for you? And as we think about this focus on aligning our beliefs and creating bold action, and action being selecting a word for our life theme, we have to have a conversation around accountability and fear. So in order to be a strong leader, we need to understand, what does accountability mean? You can't lead other people if you don't know how to lead yourself. You can't know other people if you don't know yourself first. So when we think about accountability, we define it in this way. It is the responsibility and answerability of individuals or groups for their actions, decisions, and outcomes. And it involves being reliable and transparent in fully committing, meeting expectations, and taking ownership for your own responsibility. So when you think about this, I would ask you, do you think it's easier to be accountable to yourself or be accountable to others? I'd love it if you would populate that in the Q&A. It's easier for me to be accountable to myself, or it's easier for me to be accountable to others. Many times I find when I'm working with leaders, they find it easier to be accountable to somebody else and will quickly abandon accountability for themselves. So if I have to do something for someone else, that's easier than me doing it for myself. I will show up for you at 6 a.m. because you asked me to. But if I say, I'm going to set my alarm and wake up at 6 a.m., that's a little bit harder. Some of you, though, might be the opposite. I might ditch my friend at 6 a.m., but if I got something to do, I'll do it for myself. So I'm curious what you guys think. Go ahead and populate that in the Q&A. Holding yourself or others accountable is not easy. And this is a skill that takes time to develop. And there are lots of challenges with that. And so a few of those that I pulled together for you to understand this a little bit better are on the screen for you right now. When we think about challenges with holding accountability, whether accountability to ourselves or holding other people accountable, a lot of times it comes from a lack of clarity, right? So we have unclear expectations. The goals aren't clear. It makes it difficult for us to really understand what we're being accountable for. Another challenge that gets in front of us is procrastination, putting off tasks or responsibility that undermine our progress. A lot of people struggle with accountability and are challenged by procrastination because they've been successful waiting to the last minute, and they love like the rush and the win that comes from like, I got it done. And if we get kind of addicted to that last bit of rush, we end up procrastinating, which holds us back from holding ourselves accountable to our goals and being our best self and being a great leader. Another challenge with accountability is this idea of blame shifting, where we blame other people or we blame external factors instead of actually owning our responsibility in something. I didn't actually get it done when I said I would get it done. I didn't actually fully develop that assignment. I just kind of dialed it in, whatever that might be. But shifting the blame, like, well, because I was up late last night, or, well, she's just a really mean teacher, or, she just has unrealistic expectations. Instead of taking responsibility, we push blame. The last challenge with accountability is often this idea of inconsistency, right? So failing to follow through on our commitments consistently, saying we're going to be really good today, but like by Friday, we kind of dropped off. It's the same idea of like setting goals. Everyone sets goals in January, and by February, they kind of have forgotten them. So to be a really strong leader, a leader that leads through their values and takes bold action, is someone that consistently shows up and is clear on what they want from their life and experiences individuals in that same way. And so when we think about these challenges with accountability, one of the things that comes out of that is fear of failing. And I'm sure everyone has experienced, or if I said to you, tell me about a time when you felt like you were really failing, everyone can come up with an idea. We worry so much that we might fail that we actually end up failing because we don't drive any action. It's such a big fear, guys, that many people have made their life's work about understanding fear and failure. Some of the research that I found, 30% of people in the population are terrified of failure, and it ranks among some of the worst fears in our country. And another study found that 33% of Americans who have this fear, it prevented them from starting a business. Can you imagine? You have this great idea, but 33% of the people don't even want to start it because they're afraid like, oh, it just never happened, right? And so I'd love for you to put in the QA right now, because we'll talk about this in a moment, what it looks like for you when you are acting out of a fear of failing. And I'll talk more about that, but I want you to go ahead and share what happens to you when you're experiencing that fear of failure. And that might be, that might come from a lot of different ways, right? So let's talk about like where that shows up. We know that fear of failure shows up in our academics, worrying about getting good grades, getting into a college, getting through a certification, test anxiety, right? So, has anyone seen that movie Inside Out 2? I love that movie. That whole movie is about this idea of the fear of failure and how it shows up and giving us negative self talk and how that can be damaging to us and to the relationships within our life. So I want you to think about, how does fear, your fear of failure, show up in your life? What does that look like? And I want to share with you, when I think about the fear of failure in relationships, this is how it can show up for people, right? So I want to talk through these. One is avoiding commitment, right? So if I'm afraid of failing, and I have a friend that's like a rock star and it feels like everything they touch is golden, then I might start avoiding committing to things with them because I don't want to look bad, right? So that might show up. Another way that fear can show up and manifest in relationships is by sabotaging, right? So this is when we end up gossiping about people. We have a friend and we're just jealous of them. And so rather than taking a moment and saying, like, well, what can I do to make myself better? We just talk badly about that person and sabotage that relationship, or try to sabotage relationships with that person with other people in our friend group. Fear can also show up where we have difficulty trusting people. So rather than talking to a friend that kind of is a little bit farther ahead than you, maybe they're a little bit better test taker, maybe they're getting just a little bit of better grades, we have difficulty trusting them because we are automatically assuming that they think the bad things that we think about ourselves. Trust is a reciprocal relationship. You can only give what you get, right? So if I say I trust you, then I have to be vulnerable and open to you. But if I'm not, you're not going to be that way with me. And so fear in our relationship sometimes shows up as difficulty trusting people. Fear in a relationship can also show up as overcompensating. So maybe you've had a friend in your life that really, 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 really liked you, and they liked you a little bit more than you liked them. Like they really felt like you were awesome. And you're like, you're a great person, but I don't want to be with you like all the time. Sometimes that comes from that person's fear of like, I want you to like me as much as I like you. So they overcompensate and they can become annoying to you, right? Fear can show up in relationships with just a fear of being vulnerable, that if I tell you something, that you're not going to keep it secret between us. If I share with you, like, I am stressed out about getting into college, or I'm worried that I'm going to get in trouble, and you as my friend are going to be like, yeah, you should be worried, right? Like that fear of being vulnerable with me, that can sometimes create us to be shut off, create up barriers around ourselves. And the one thing that I see constantly with leaders of all ages, whether they be young people like yourself or executives of companies, is this idea of needing to be perfect. That fear of failure, specifically in relationships, can show up as like, I need to be perfect. If I'm not perfect, then everything's going to go wrong. And that perfect somehow means successful, that perfect somehow means that you're good. And that's not true. We don't have to be perfect. What we have to be is we have to be human. And so, as I'm sharing all these ideas with you, and if some of these are kind of hitting a nerve with you, what I would say, this is my tip for you. This is what I tell leaders that I coach all the time. When all these fear of failure ideas are going through their head, I got to be perfect. I got to be right. I've got to do all the great things. I ask them one statement. And that question is it true? Is the story that you're telling yourself true? Because so often what happens is we start striving to accomplish goals, and we can start developing negative self-talk and making up a story of, I have to be perfect or my friends won't love me. And we ask ourselves, is that true? Where's the data that shows that my friends won't love me if I'm not perfect right now? I'm going to tell you right now, if that is true for you, then you have the wrong friends. You need to find new friends. If the people around you don't love you for who you are, you need to find new friends, okay? But if you're telling yourself this story about, I need to be perfect because, ask yourself, is that true? And why do I believe that? because a lot of times we can't actually find the data. It's just a story that we're telling ourselves. And so we really need to check ourselves and follow up with, how do I know that? And the how do I know that is actually the truth behind why we're having this negative self-talk. And it comes from this idea of fear. So how can we really embrace those fears? That's what I want to speak to now. And when we think about embracing our fears, this goes back to that practice of having that one word, one kind of touchstone all year to help you be your best self, to help you be the leader that you want to be. So, what fears lead you to wanting to be your best self? Okay. I want you to think about how you can move past any fear that you have today, and how you, being a great leader, can be accomplished. And choosing one word can help you get unstuck. Where are you stuck in thinking about yourself being the best leader you can be? Maybe there's one or two things today that you're stuck on. Maybe you're thinking because you don't have enough friends, right? Or maybe you're thinking, I can't be a great leader because I didn't get the position, I didn't get the opportunity that I wanted, right? Whatever those one or two things are, I want you to think about choosing that one word and how that can shift your mindset and shift the way that you think about yourself, so that other people will treat you differently. We give people permission to how they should treat us. So if you have negative self-talk, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not qualified enough, and you keep putting that out, people will start to treat you that way. So you have to talk about yourself in good ways so that people will experience you in good ways. And you need to create a strategy, right? So you have to set a short-term goal. Select a friend that you can be truthful with, that you can be vulnerable with, to help you pick a word, set a goal, and be your best leadership self this year. That's my challenge for you. And as we're going through all this, I know there's so many different words and so many different ways you can think about this. A fun little tool that you can look at, guys, is if you copy down that website, this is a fun random word generator. So if you're trying to think about, like, what's a word I can choose this year? This is kind of a fun little exercise. I'm going to leave it here for just a second. You can take a screenshot of that and check that out if you're still struggling with the word. Or go back to that list of values and choose one of those values to be your word for this year. Now, one of the things that I love to do in my free time is I love movies. I love entertainment. I love going to theater. I love the movies. And often when I'm teaching classes, I love to provide resources for people after the fact to kind of reflect on some of the things that I'm talking about. So I have for you a couple films. If you really love this idea of being a great leader, aligning your values with bold action, here's some films that I would love for you to check out. And if you have seen them, drop it in the Q&A and let me know which ones you like best. I've got 6. So the first one is Queen of Katwe. This is found on Disney Plus. If you haven't seen this movie, it's absolutely fantastic. I can't recommend it enough. The Pursuit of Happiness is also a true story based on this gentleman, Chris Gardner, who had a really hard struggle and really became very successful. Moneyball is another great movie. If you're an athlete or if you like sports, it's a great movie to watch. This next set, I'm thinking you guys probably, has everyone seen Big Hero 6? Great movie about self-actualization, believing in yourself. Hidden Figures is another film based on true story. Fantastic. I recommend this movie all the time. I watch it at least once a year. And one of my absolute favorite movies about leadership, overcoming adversity, believing in yourself, which then inspires other people to believe in themselves, is Remember the Titans. So if you haven't seen those movies, I'd invite you to check them out. If you have other movies that you think are awesome, drop those in the Q&A. I've so enjoyed this time with you guys. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen now, and Sarah can jump back in and tell me kind of some of the things that you guys put in the Q&A, and you guys can share with me any questions that you might have.
All right, I'm going to blast them on the screen for you, okay?
Yeah, that sounds great. What's a goal? What's a goal you set? Like a goal. I think the question is, what's a goal that I set? So one of the goals I set for myself this year was exercise, because I'm really bad about getting up and exercising. And so my goal was to get up at 6 a.m. Monday through Friday and exercise for at least 45 minutes. Now, I have not done very well at that. So I have asked my husband to be my accountability partner now and hold me accountable to that, because it's so much easier to say, oh, I'm going to exercise later at the end of the day. But the reason I have that as a goal for me is because in order for me to love myself, I need to move my body more. I need to be more physically strong. I need to feel comfortable in my body. And so for me, that's why I set that goal. I see, when I start getting afraid of failure, I get overwhelmed, stressed, and lost in my head. Absolutely. And so that, whoever wrote that, a really great way to check yourself again is to say that, is this true? Like, whatever is stressing you out, like, is this true? Right? When I act out of fear and failure, I overwork and I do more than I need to. A great example, Emma, of like that overcompensating, right? Sometimes we work extra, extra hard just so we can like let you think that I'm perfect, let you think that I'm wonderful. Anger. I get angry when I'm afraid. Absolutely. That's so true. That happens. When I experience fear of failure, I end up performing an activity, academic or otherwise, due to the risk of failure. I end up not performing. Yes, because I'd rather not do it than do it badly. Not a great way for us to think about our leadership. You are all unique. You are all valued. You are all necessary in this world, and you contribute unique things. So don't let fear get in the way of that. Move past that fear, and recognizing it's a fear is a way to do that. It's much more easier to be accountable to others. I work with people and help them, but for the life of me, I can't stay doing what I set myself. So Lucas, what you need is a really great accountability partner. You need someone that has that same level of achievement and same level of interest to be their best self, so you can lift each other up and not just pull each other down. That's what I would say there. I personally think it's easier to be accountable to others. Accountable for others. I'm going to scroll through. You guys, you did such a great job responding. Thank you so much for this engagement. Oh, you've been doing such a good job. I've been struggling with bad thoughts such as self-harm and such, but I'm getting help, and I enjoyed thinking about this. Good. I'm so grateful. I'm grateful that you got your help. I really appreciate your honesty. And recognizing that you have bad thoughts about yourself is a great way for you to now suddenly fill that with really good thoughts. And I would invite you to also make sure that you continue to ask for help and get help in that way.
Gretchen, we have a question up here that says, how can you get yourself to stick to your goals and then achieve them as well?
Yeah. So one thing I would say is, whatever that goal is, sometimes we set these really big, lofty goals, and what we don't think about are milestones in between to accomplish them. So whatever your big goal is, think about how can you do one smaller thing to get to that, and what's like one action you can take today. And you can break that down. I like to think of a goal, like if I have a goal for the year, then I think about quarterly. So 4 times in that year, what's a way in which I can check myself to make sure I'm working towards that, right? And so if I have a quarterly goal, then from that quarterly goal, I can look at that and say, okay, every month, what do I need to be doing to be working towards that? And from that month, I can think about, what do I maybe need to be doing weekly? And sometimes, what do I need to be doing daily, right? So the way in which we hold ourselves accountable to that is having measurements, knowing what we're aiming towards. And it takes writing it down. I would also say posting it somewhere that you're looking at it. Maybe you've got a planner. I have a practice where I have a weekly planner, and every Saturday I set up time. I take about 2 hours, because I have that time. I get up and I look at my week that's coming up, and I write down everything I have going on, all my meetings and all the things. And then I write in there when I'm going to exercise. And then I also take a look at, when do I have time to move forward in my goals? And if it's something like, I need to have more time with a friend of mine because I've been kind of neglecting my relationships, I will write it in my planner as to when I'm going to do that. And then that's kind of like my plan for the week. And then I look back at what I had done the week before, and anything that I didn't do that I said I was going to do, I pull those forward and I take time to knock that out first off in the beginning of the week. So it's really just a practice of getting very clear on what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Um, Someone said, I tend to usually view the more negative parts of a situation. How can I stop doing that and view more of the positive parts of not so good situations in life?
Mm. So one thing I'm going to, whoever wrote this, I want to invite you to think about that differently. Um, being negative, we could say negative, right? But what I would say is that you probably have a really great gift of recognizing where risk can show up in a situation. So rather than seeing that as I'm being negative, I want to invite you to think about that as a strength, that you're able to see the whole picture and identify for individuals where things may not work, right? So that can actually be a strength, especially on a team, because teams can fail if everyone's like, oh my gosh, everything we do is amazing, right? So instead, think about that as a strength. And in order to kind of change that self talk, partner with somebody that's overly positive, right? And have that friend say back to when you're thinking something that you're calling a negative thought, which we're going to change that and say a critical thought. Critical criticism, feedback is a really good thing. It's actually a gift. And so
Yeah, keep
think
going.
of it. Can you guys still hear me? Because my screen kind of like I look
Mhm.
into it. I'm okay. All right. And partner up with a friend and have that friend say back to you what you said in the way in which they would say it in a really super positive way. And pay attention to the language. A lot of times it's the language choice and the tone of voice that you're using. So just be conscious of that and maybe make note of a time when you felt like you were giving really good feedback, but it got received poorly. And go back to that person and ask them, how could I have said that differently? So it wouldn't have, I can tell I made you upset. What word did I use that really upset you? Because that'll help you kind of change that. But I don't want you to think that being critical is a bad thing. It's actually a really good gift. Oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I can't hear you. Something has happened with the audio.
What is the best way to help with procrastination?
Oh my gosh. That's a great question. I'm better at procrastination depending on the things. Like if it's about like balancing my checkbook, I don't know. If someone's got an answer, you tell me because I stink at that, right? Um, I think when we're thinking about procrastination, we really have to get into like, what are we afraid of? Right. I know for me, like not balancing my checkbook, I'm bad at math. I suck at it. It's like my kryptonite, seriously. I still have like, this is my calculator, which is bad. Right. So my fear is that when I balance my checkbook, I'm afraid that I'm going to have overspent or I'm not going to have enough money to pay all my bills. Right. That's just it. So recognizing like that's my fear and then saying like, Gretchen, like this is stupid. Get through this because that fear of like I don't think I have enough money is actually impacting me not doing things I want to do, right? So to move past procrastination, what I would say is just you need to get to know you, right? And what is it? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid that you're going to get a bad grade so therefore you're not studying, right? Are you afraid that if I study, then I've got fear of being missing out of something else because all my friends are at Culver's and having a good time and I really need to put in the time. Whatever that fear it might be. Getting really clear on who you are and recognizing that fear and dismissing. Because once we know what our fear is, we can say to ourselves, okay, well, like I don't need to be afraid of that. Or I need some help with that fear, right? Like I can't get out of my head. And then we can ask for help.
Oh, Santana, who gives you, or how about what gives you motivation?
Mm. So many things give me motivation. I think that I think a lot of people think that inspiring stories and people that are super successful are the only way you can get motivated, right? So I love to hear success stories. I love to hear when people have accomplished great things. But I will tell you, when I hear those things, for me, it actually isn't super motivating. It's aspiring. Like I would love to aspire to that. What motivates me is learning. And when I hear about someone that tried something and they failed at it, that to me is relatable. And I go, oh gosh, you know what? Like I would have done that same thing. Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful you shared that with me. I get motivated. My children are a great motivation for me. I'm a very spiritual woman. I'm a faithful woman. So I get a lot of motivation from my prayer life and recognizing that there's more to this world than just me and that there is a higher purpose to all that we're doing. I get motivated from doing stuff like this. And you guys, like, this has made my day. The fact that you guys are so involved is so awesome. It would be better for me if I could see all your gorgeous faces and we could be talking. Like, that would be super motivating. I'm an extrovert, so I thrive off of other people. But beauty in the world is really what I would say motivates me. So
Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
I know I personally learned a lot, so I know that they did too.
Yay.